Welcome to Wellywood Wargaming, where the grim dark never sleeps. Crack open a bottle of wild snake and spark up a low stick as we take a journey down Underhive.
Hello again, and welcome to the 5th installment in my top 10 weapons of Necromunda. We are now on to the close combat weapons, which I have to say is my favourite part of Necromunda. I love the way that close combat works and the absolute plethora. I know you guys like me saying the word plethora, so I've said it twice there for you. Of options available at close combat is just fantastic. We've got exclusives for certain gangs. We've got just millions and millions of different close combat weapons. So it was really hard for me to narrow down a top 10 here. So I've done my best. Again, don't shoot me if you disagree with some of this. That's absolutely fine. Instead, comment down below and get that conversation started, because I really like to see the community engaging with this kind of stuff. And you've done really well with the last videos on this topic as well. So anyway, before I get into it, please do like, share, subscribe, and check out the Patreon as well as we get into Necromunda top 10 close combat weapons. We're going to start off with a silly one, and this, of course, is the most iconic 40k close combat weapon, the Power Fist. Now, I can't personally imagine a Power Fist finding its way into Necromunda, let alone the Underhive, but if you do happen to find one of these things, it's quite a scary weapon. So we've got a Rarity 11 Imperial weapon that you can get from the trading post here. It's quite hard to get hold of, but it's 100 credits as well, which is quite expensive. It's certainly not the most optimal close combat weapon, but if you do happen to give someone a little cheeky slap with this thing, it's really, really going to hurt. So it is melee or melee, depending on how you guys want me to say it. I've been corrected so many times on that word, by the way, that I've lost count. So I'm just going to say both, melee and melee. There you go. Hopefully that pleases everybody. It's power, pulverize, and unwieldy. So unwieldy being a bit of a problem there, meaning that you can't use it with another close combat weapon in conjunction. But if you hit people with it, it is strength +3, -3 AP, and 3 damage. So 3 3s there, strength +3. So giving it to a strength 3 fighter, they're suddenly strength 6, let alone giving it to a Goliath or a Beastman hitting on strength 7. -3 AP and 3 damage is whopping. So if you do hit stuff with this, it's absolutely going out of action. You've also got pulverize to add in there as well. If you absolutely don't kill it, you've got pulverize just to try and make sure that you kill it. I've seen this thing whiff though. For 100 credits, I've seen someone charge in with 1 or 2 punches, miss both of them, and then just get taken out on the repercussions. So it can whiff a little bit, especially because you haven't got as many attacks, being that it's unwieldy. So bear that in mind as well. But if you do hit stuff, it's pretty fun because it's just dead. It's just mush, and that's it. And that's why I had to include the Power Fist. This one's a real fun one. It's the Rotary flensing saw. This one is basically a huge buzzsaw attached to a chain that you swing around your head, and it's just an awesome weapon in Necromunda. It's not OP, I don't think. It's just a really fun, fluffy idea that corpse grinders get here. Corpse grinders have got a bunch of scary weapons. This isn't their most scary, but I really do like it. The main reason why I like it is it's versatile 4 inches. So it gives you a hell of a lot of threat range on your already high threat range with decent movement, +3 on the charge, and then you're adding +4 to that as well. This thing is 55 credits. It is corpse grinder only normally. However, there was an appendix trading post sort of thing as well, which made it Rarity 9. So you can get this on Venators, Outcasts, and other gangs as well, which is pretty fun. And I think that's a really good option. I think I'm quite happy that Games Workshop made it available to other gangs too. It's no longer corpse grinder exclusive, at least according to my sources here. It's -1 to hit at the 4-inch versatile range, which is not a problem. But in base to base, you don't get any negs on that. It's strength +1, -2 AP, and 2 damage. Pretty tasty. -2 AP is going to mulch mesh armor and go through most armor types. 2 damage is very sexy indeed as well. It also has knockback, so you can make that damage even further and knock people out of range so they can't charge you and stuff. It has melee or melee, and also shred, which is a unique trait that came out with corpse grinders. Shred means that your wound rolls of 6 make the AP double, so you suddenly make it -4 on the AP as well, getting through heavy carapace armor like butter. So I really do like the Rotary flensing saw, mainly for the idea of just an absolute nutcase swinging this thing round his head. Also, by the way, the skill of choice that I would give a corpse grinder champion with this thing is absolutely Rain of Blows, meaning that your fight basic now becomes a fight simple action, meaning that you can swing this thing at 4-inch range twice in a turn and just clip people with it. It's pretty cool. It's situational, but it's a very, very cool, fluffy choice. So I had to include the Rotary flensing saw in here. Yuck. I had to include these as well, the paired heavy chain cleavers. These things give people nightmares. When corpse grinders were released, everybody went and looked at the weapons. The paired heavy chain cleavers are probably the most scary weapon that corpse grinders get. In fact, they are, absolutely. These things are revolting, but again, if you're playing corpse grinders and you're running a butcher, this is the choice. You don't go with anything else. You just go with the paired heavy chain cleavers. You can get one of these things, and I think they're like 80 credits on their own, but you get a discount if you get the paired option, which is 130 credits. So definitely good value here. These things are +1 to hit, by the way, which you don't need on a butcher because he's already hitting on 2s anyway, but they're +1 to hit just because, which is crazy if you ask me. Strength +2, -2 AP and 2 damage. So really, really nasty. All 2s there, similar to like a chain glaive, basically, just easier to use and easier to hit with. They also have melee, of course, and the paired trait, meaning that you double your attacks characteristic on the charge. When you've got a butcher who has, I think, 2 attacks or 3 attacks? I think it's 2 attacks on the charge, doubled to 4, and then you've got the charge extra +1 plus the offhand weapon. You get six attacks hitting on 2s at strength +2, strength 6, with -2 AP and 2 damage, and not to mention probably the most powerful trait in close combat as well, which is Sever. Sever is another trait similar to Shred, but much, much better. Injury rolls inflicted with this weapon are automatically out of action. So if you hit and wound, you're dead. It's that simple. There's no need to faff around with injury rolls. You're just dead. So this is one of the reasons why people hate corpse grinders. The way that injuries, used to stack or should stack in a lot of people's campaigns as well, made it very, very, very hard to deal with and just not very nice when you get your leader absolutely mulched by this thing. I personally, as an arbitrator, don't stack injuries. It's just 1. We'll just leave it at 1 because I think this thing certainly would make things very, very nasty to recover from. Anyway, so that's the paired heavy chain cleavers. I had to include that in here. It is yuck, though. It's absolutely yuck. I'm sure you'd agree, but it has to be in there. This one's a fun one, and you may have gathered by now that I really do like versatile weapons. I think versatile is just such a good trait. It's very powerful. It means that you can hit people from a bit of range without any sort of repercussions in close combat. It's very good. This one is a bit of a weird weapon. This was included in the Apocrypha Necromunda by the title of Blood in the Spire. So if you haven't read that, go and download it from the Warhammer community. It's a very good one. It's got a Uphive trading post of very, very rare and illegal weapons here. This one is rarity 12 and it's 80 credits, which I think is incredibly good value. This, of course, is the Barbed flabellum, which I absolutely love saying, Barbed flabellum, so I've said it twice there for you. It just rolls off the lips quite nicely, the Barbed flabellum. So 4-inch versatile again, so similar to the Rotary flensing saw, very, very good on the threat range. +2 to hit in close combat and +1 to hit at versatile range makes this very reliable indeed. You could give this to a fighter with low weapon skill. Suddenly they're hitting very reliably indeed. So that's worth thinking about with Venators and Outcast. You could go for a profile which has good stats in another area and maybe not great weapon skill and give this to them. Suddenly they're really good all across the board. So worth bearing stuff like that in mind. There's no strength characteristic on this, but it is -2 AP, which again is just very, very good. -2 AP is all you're ever going to really need because most targets are going to have mesh armor. So it goes straight through that. No damage and no ammo, of course, but it is melee with toxin and versatile. So toxin, again, you can combine this with a chem synth, but this is very good at taking out multi-wound targets like your Goliaths and Orlok leaders, things like that. And even squat leaders, charter masters and whatnot. This thing's going to really, really hurt if you hit people with it. Plus, best thing about this is they can't hit you back when you're just whipping them from afar with the Barbed flabellum. So that's why I had to include this one in my top 10. This one's gross. I actually just really hate it. It's my least favorite weapon in the whole game, but I thought I had to include it in here because I know that you, the community, is going to have a massive go at me if I don't. I'm going to include it anyway, even though I hate doing so. It makes my skin crawl. This is the boning sword. Being boned by a boning sword is just not very nice. The reason why I hate this thing so much is it's just woefully undercosted. It should be Corpse Grinder exclusive as well, but there was an appendix amendment which made them available at common on the trading post, I believe, at least according to my sources, which just makes them really, really gross. 20 credits for the boning sword, and it is hideous. So, I mean, if you're facing a Corpse Grinder gang, you're going to expect to find a few boning swords in here. The trouble is you can give these to all of your initiates, and suddenly your initiates hit like an absolute truck for only 20 credits, not to mention the hand flamer spam and stuff like that as well. Generally, I would say as an arbitrator, boning swords are a problem. They are OP. I don't say that very often, by the way, but I think boning swords are actually OP. They should be rare or illegal at quite a high value, and they should be a lot more expensive than 20 credits. I've said it, and I'm not going to change my mind on that. So there you go. They are strength as user, -2 AP, 2 damage, parry, and rending. So a really nasty combination there for only 20 credits. You've got parry, meaning that, you know, you can just make someone re-roll a hit roll on you if they're attacking you, and then you hit them back with something that's 2 damage, -2 AP with rending. So rending making that damage go up to a possible 3 damage. For 20 credits, it is hideously undercosted and absolutely yuck. Sorry, I just can't do it. That's the boning sword. Now on to a slightly lighter note, we've got the Thunder Hammer. Now the Thunder Hammer is definitely a very iconic 40k weapon. You know, you see it used on Termies and 40k Space Marines and stuff like that. Again, I can't really imagine one of these finding its way into the Underhive somehow, but if it does, and you get hold of one, this is a particularly nasty weapon. It's, you know, like a Power Fist, but different, I suppose, in some ways as well. It's rarity 11, so it is quite hard to get hold of, and so it should be, because it's a flipping Thunderhammer, and it's 70 credits as well. The Thunderhammer is melee or melee, depending on how you like me to say it. It's strength +1, -1 AP, but 3 damage. So only strength +1, it's not too scary. Only AP -1, again, it's not too scary, but it's damage 3, which is huge. So when you look at that next to a Power Fist, it's certainly not as scary. However, but what it does have, which no other weapon in the game has, is both power and shock. Now, both of those traits on their own are very scary. What shock does is a hit roll of 6 automatically wounds. You then combine that with power, which means your hit roll of 6 causes +1 damage and no save. So +1 damage, so damage 4, no save, and automatically wounding. That is very scary, and that is why I included the Thunderhammer in my top 10. This one's a funny one, and the only Xenos or alien weapon that I've got in this list so far. It is, of course, the Xenarch Death Arc. Now, again, I have a hankering for versatile weapons, and this has the longest versatile range on it of 5 inches, which is just a really long threat range. It's only strength 3. It's +1 to hit at base to base as well, though, not at the versatile range, which is nice to have as well. So if you get stuck in base to base with it and you don't want to use it at versatile range, it's +1 to hit, which is nice. Strength 3, only 1 damage and no AP. Nothing to write home about so far. It does have an ammo characteristic, though, of 2+, and you'll see why. It is a close combat weapon, but it has somewhat of a shooting profile as well, hence the ammo roll of 2+ in here. It's esoteric, meaning that you can't upgrade it in any way, but that's fine because it's a close combat weapon anyway. It's melee or melee, and it's also rapid fire 2, shock, and versatile. So rapid fire 2, meaning you can put out a possible 6 hits with this thing at 5-inch range with shock. So if you're hitting on 6s, you're auto wounding. Yes, it's only strength 3 with no AP, but that's pretty good. And it's 75 credits and illegal 9. So it's actually fairly easy to get hold of from the black market trading post. I like this weapon. It's cool. It's different. I think I had a player in one of my campaigns with an Escher Ganger or Specialist just running around with this thing, just whipping everybody. And it was pretty scary. It wasn't very nice being whipped by a Xenarch Death Arc. So, you know, avoid it where possible. But I had to include that in the top 10. We're into the top 3 now, and this is my absolute favorite weapon in the entire game at ranged or close combat, however you like it. This is the Greatsword. I absolutely love this weapon, mainly for the idea of it. The fact that you're running around with a claymore in Necromunda is just really, really cool. It's Cawdor, or it came out with Cawdor originally, but you can get it from the trading post at rare 10, and it's 40 credits as well. I think 40 credits is an absolute steal, pun intended there. But the greatsword, I just think, is brilliant. Again, it's a versatile weapon of 1 inch range. So 1 inch versatile is certainly not the longest versatile range, but it is nice to have. It's +1 to hit at that versatile range as well. So it's nice. It's strength +1, it's -1 AP, and it's only 1 damage. So you might be thinking this isn't a particularly scary weapon, but it is. Oh, but it is. And it has sever, and that's why it's scary. So if you're rolling injury dice, then it's an automatic out of action. You're just chopping people's limbs, heads, arms off and eviscerating people with it. I love this weapon. It's so simple. It's nicely costed. It's just really fun to model on a corridor champion or leader just running around with a huge claymore. I just love the idea of it. Sever, it is unwieldy, by the way, so you can only use that in combat, which again is fine with that versatile 1 inch range there as well. Something recently, now that the new Venators have been announced, I really, really do like the high movement leader profile of movement 6 with this, so that you've got a really, really nasty threat range of 10 inches with it, by the way, charging 6 plus D3 plus 1 is 10 inches. Quick math. The greatsword is, I just think, my favorite weapon in the whole game. Honestly, it really is. It's really fun. I've used it to great effect, and it's very scary. It's not to be messed with, not to be trifled with. The greatsword, the sever is just very, very powerful. It's one of the best traits in the game, and when you're hitting people at versatile range with sever, it's nasty. So take my word for it. The greatsword is just a fantastic weapon, and I absolutely had to include it in my top 10 here. I've put it in here at number 3. All right, we now have a Delac special, and this is the Serpent's fangs. These are only available to Delac Nachtghouls. I love saying Nachtghoul, it's a good one. But Serpent's fangs are 90 credits and only available to those guys. I had to include them in the top 10. I wasn't sure where to put them, but I think, honestly, they've got to be right near the top here. They are incredibly nasty. These things will just rip anything to pieces. By the way, your Nachtghoul's strength 4 as well. They're pretty high strength for a sort of Delac weird little mayonnaise-covered fighter. But, you know, strength 4 out the gate. These things are strength +2. They have no AP, and they're only damage 1. So off the bat, strength +2, you're hitting at strength 6. That's pretty nice, right? Now, they have melee, of course. They have paired, meaning that you double your attacks characteristic on the charge. Lots of attacks with these things at strength 6, easily wounding. But you also have rending and phase. Now, rending is, of course, the wound roll of a 6 causes extra damage. So that ups the damage on this thing. But phase really is something that's exclusive to mainly Delac weapons. I think there might be phase on a couple of other weapons as well. But this ignores saves from armor and field armor as well. So there is no save against the phase weapon at all. There's no way of saving it. You are just dead. I think when you combine the high strength, the rending is just nice to have with the, of course, paired, and the fact that you just can't save it. It's very hard to deal with. 90 credits for this weapon, I think, is really good value as well. Serpent's fangs, nasty, yes. Top 2, definitely, absolutely. So there you go. Delac players will love Serpent's fangs. Again, you can run the sword with your Nachtghoul as well, which is also very good, but I just think the paired on this really does make it so much more powerful. So I had to include the Serpent's fangs in here, and they just look really cool as well. So number 2, Serpent's fangs. Did you guess what was number 1? Probably not, and I can see people arguing with this one quite a lot, but I have decided to chuck the chain axe in at number 1. It isn't, when you look at its profile, it isn't a scary weapon. All of the other weapons I've mentioned so far are far more high damage dealing or just scary in a number of different ways. The reason why I've included the chain axe is for its cost and effectiveness. I think it is fantastic value for a very reliable, decent close combat weapon, which most of the time is going to be enough to take out targets. Now, this thing is normally 30 credits at the trading post, which is very cheap. You know, it's only 5 credits more than a chainsword, but it's quite a lot better if you ask me. If you play House Goliath, though, you get this at 25 credits, which is an absolute steal. The chain axe's stats are as follows. It's +1 to hit in close combat. So suddenly you've got an average fighter hitting on 3s. You've got a leader who's typically weapon skill 3 in most cases, hitting on 2s now. That is not to be sniffed at. We've also got strength +1 as well, similar to an axe. Again, making an average fighter now wound on 3s, or a strong fighter strength 5 all of a sudden. Again, it's not to be underestimated. It's -1 AP, which is often enough, honestly. You know, most enemies are going to have mesh or flak armor most of the time, right? So -1 AP, you're forcing them into making 6-up saves or nothing a lot of the time. It's only damage 1, of course, but that's fine because the amount of traits that you get here for the chain axe, I think, are really, really good value. We get disarm, which is what you get on an axe here. So if the hit is a 6 before modifiers, the target can't use any weapons when making reaction attacks. That's really good. And again, not to be sniffed at, disarm is a decent trait. It has melee or melee. That's the last time I'm going to say it in this video, by the way. Parry, which is a bit of a weird one. So you get parry on this, just like you would with a chainsword. Honestly, I've always thought parry was a bit of a misprint, but apparently not. When erratas have been done, this hasn't been looked at all. It still has parry. Parry is really, really nice, particularly on a leader or someone you want to be saved in close combat. If for some reason they don't delete or kill what they're trying to attack, you get to then parry. Which is really nice to have as well. And of course, rending. So rending is a really good thing, and it pops up a lot, you know, on your wound rolls of 6s, it's extra damage. So suddenly that damage 1 goes to damage 2. Again, all of the other weapons I've mentioned so far are far scarier when you look at the stats and stuff, but I just think for 25 or 30 credits, this is the most effective close combat weapon in the game for the price. And that is why I've included it at number 1. So please do comment down below. Let me know what you think about all this. Whether you agree with me or not, that's absolutely fine. Again, this is subjective to your own meta, your own experiences with Necromunda, but I'm pretty happy with the 10 that I've got here. Again, my favorite on the whole list is absolutely the Greatsword, but the order that I put things in, I think, is about right. But yeah, stay tuned for the next video, and I'll be back real soon. Peace out.